All right. You guys win. We give up. The Oppo Enco X2 is good, like really good. But with all good things, there's a but. Goedendag, weer DHRME. Disproving haters with real measurements and entertainment.
Okay, we hear you thinking. Oppo threw their creativity out of the window and blatantly copied Apple. And you'd be right, to a certain degree. The case looks and feels like a rounder version of the AirPods Pro case, but you can actually get the case and buds in black too. We like the design though. The case is very portable and pocketable. The earbuds feel comfortable for long periods of time. The IP54 dust and water resistance is great for workouts. However, speaking of workouts, the fit was fine but not very consistent. One of my ears had a good solid fit and the other one had to be adjusted every 30 minutes or so. So it wasn't terrible, but having to make the odd adjustment makes them feel less than perfect. In terms of sleeping, I used it for many nights before sleeping and I could imagine this being a set of buds to sleep with, as long as you don't put too much direct pressure on it. If you really want something focused on sleeping though, these buds might be something to consider. Also, here's the part where we say what fits our ears doesn't have to fit yours and vice versa.
The squeeze stems were fine, but somehow lacked the consistency of what Apple provides. However, they are fully customizable with a single, double, and triple squeeze that can be customized on each bud separately, including which noise cancelling modes you can switch between. But in an ironic twist, Apple's taken a page out of Oppo's book for their recent AirPods Pro 2nd generation. The Oppo already had a touch surface on the Enco X2 for volume control, and Apple's swipe gesture is exactly the same as what Oppo had. Brilliant, since this was our major gripe about the first gen AirPods Pros, and since we're too lazy to change volume on our phones. You can also change the swipe gesture to switch track, but we prefer to have volume.
The Oppo Enco X2 could be considered very neutral sounding buds. Considering it has dual drivers, a dynamic and a planar in each ear, our expectations were pretty high. So let's just say that these earbuds are tuned more for people looking for a more balanced sound rather than anything too wild. You have the choice between LDAC, LHD, and AAC. And although our Galaxy Z Flip 4 seems to be having some bugs with it, I got the LDAC to work with our Nothing phone. So for wireless buds, you can ask for better resolution. The max volume was more than enough to destroy our ears, and we expect this to be the case for most of you.
Having said that, it comes with 4 EQ presets. Unfortunately, there's no custom EQ option. The Enco X Classic preset is by far the best preset that takes most advantage of the hardware and the codecs that the Enco X2 can use, because it's, how do I say it, not garbage. Anyway, this preset reminds us a lot of the Galaxy Buds 2 Pro, which is much more expensive, whereas the Punchy, as its name suggests, bumps up the mid bass. I have Dynaudio speakers at home for listening to music, so I'm well versed with the brand and have been a big fan of theirs, but this seems to be a collaboration, not unlike the Hasselblad collab on the OnePlus phones. You know, let's get an old world European brand for credibility and optics. I'm sorry to say, but the Dynaudio EQ presets are all pretty much garbage, especially the Punchy one. I mean, what the hell is this? They're basically more bass, most bass, and underwater. The Simple and Clear might be about the only usable one from them. Okay, enough whining. Let's talk about these buds in context of the Enco X Classic preset. To start off with, to my ears, this has some of the widest soundstage I've ever heard on in-ear buds. Look, I'll be honest, I'm not a soundstage and imaging guy, but something about these, it's just very unique on that front. Tool's chocolate chip trip sounded super wide and there were no noticeable gaps in the imaging. The bass is not as pronounced but can be felt. All the Dynaudio presets have considerable amounts of bass, but even with the Enco X preset, the bass is there and very precise. There's excellent extension, lots of nice sub-bass thump, very good attack and decay to our ears. It's almost perfect. The mids are solid, including distorted guitars. For the best mids experience, again, the Enco X Classic is your best bet. The Simple and Clear preset is a decent alternative, which might make the sound a bit veiled, but brings back a fair amount of low end, especially for modern bass heavy music. The treble can range from muted on the Punchy to sparkly on the Enco X Classic, but we found that it never ever grated our ears. It's incredible how much detail you can get without ever being sibilant. There's absolutely nothing we dislike about the sound except the inability to go full custom and tweak a few things. We'd like to add some more sub bass to the classic Enco X, for example, or adjust the recess of the mids on the Simple and Clear. But these are all pretty much nitpicks for such great sounding buds.
There's also the ability to test your ear canal called Golden Sound, and as far as things like this go, we had a very good experience with this. The default presets that sounded like junk began to sound much better, so maybe the presets weren't the problem all along, but our ears were? Nah. Rounding up the sound, Oppo doesn't have spatial audio tricks, yet, but it does have a fit test. We must say we listened to this on LDAC quite a lot, but also on AAC. You will have pretty much 95% of the fun with AAC too, which is important because, in terms of extra features, Oppo left almost no stone unturned. You've got smart pause, meaning that the audio will pause when you take any bud out of your ear and will resume when placed back. You can also use either bud on its own while the other is charging in the case. Google Fast Pair? Check. So pair once to a phone with your Google account and it'll be found on your other phone without having the hassle of pairing. And if you're someone who can't use one device at a time but needs to be connected to two at a time, then the Oppo supports multi-point. And it worked pretty reliably. If you enable multi-point though, it will be at the cost of the LDAC codec, similar to Sony's implementation. You also get a nice device list in the app, so you can manually change connections to previously paired devices. While Oppo was ahead of Apple with adding swipe volume controls on the buds, they unfortunately couldn't predict the need for more silicone tips than the standard 3. We personally didn't have any major issues with this, but if you're someone who's generally in between sizes, then this is something to be wary of. The Hey Melody app that the Oppo shares with the OnePlus Buds Pro is pretty straightforward, and it performed well in our time with it on Android. There's a gaming mode for lower latency, and the smarts don't end there. They also extend to
active noise cancelling. You can adjust ANC levels between smart, max, moderate and mild. It also offers personalized noise cancelling, which I didn't quite get the point of, but hey, maybe you will. But the money question, how does it perform? The active noise cancelling is quite good. So we have 5 tiers that we put buds into on the channel, starting at tier 1 for the best all the way to tier 5 for the worst. We would put it at the level of the original AirPods Pro. There is some more mid-frequency noise coming in, but definitely what we call a tier 2 level of noise cancelling. Just for context, the Bose, Sony XM4 and the AirPods Pro 2 are what we would call tier 1. So in that sense, this is quite decent. When it comes to transparency mode, the Oppo has a very good amplification, but the sound feels a bit tinny because it feels like the mid frequencies are being artificially enhanced, unlike something like the AirPods Pro OG, which adds a bit more sparkle to counter the muffling one experiences by plugging up one's ears. The enhanced voices toggle does exactly what it advertised, cuts out low end while keeping the mid and higher end frequencies amplified. It's a pleasant mode to use in heavy traffic, for example, but still misses that slight edge the AirPods Pro first generation gives you. So the transparency is just about end tier 1, beginning tier 2, which is again very good.
The battery life is probably where the Oppo Enco X2 has cut a corner. 5.5 hours from the buds with ANC on and 14.5 hours from the case. Very average numbers. For reference, the newer AirPods Pro 2 gives you 6 hours on the buds and another 24 hours from the case. And while Apple tends to be conservative with its battery estimates, the Oppo is going to most certainly not match their stated numbers if you turn LDAC on. The charging speed isn't great either, 1.5 hours to charge the case from dead to full. The only silver linings here are that there is wireless charging support as well as fast charging with 5 minutes of charge giving you up to 2 hours of use. For call controls, it's a fuckman's dream and not come true. Basics to answer and hang up, check. Volume control with swipe gestures, check. But there's no muting your microphone, check. And side tone to change how much of your own voice you can hear? Nope. But remember that but we talked about in the beginning of the video? That's this but. The phone calls in noisy environments. We'll leave you to listen to a sample for yourself and see you after the break with our conclusion on the phone calls.
Oppo Enco X2 with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, 1, 2, 3. And now we have the Google Pixel Buds Pro with cars passing by. Same noisy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. The Sony WF-1000XM4 with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Optical, icicle, testing, one, two, three. The Jabra Elite 7 Pro with cars passing by. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, one, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, icicle, test, test, testing, one, two, three. All right, got some wind now. This is the Jabra Elite 7 Pro. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. So we have the Oppo Enco X2 in slightly breezy, windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. And now we have the Google Pixel Buds Pro in windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. And now the Sony WF-1000XM4 in windy conditions. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Pop, pop, popsicle, ice, ice, icicle, test, test, testing. One, two, three. Wow, that was an interesting test. For noisy environments, it's really noticeable that Jabra has a pump up the volume approach. The Sony is similar but adds some weird artifacting on the voice that makes it sound like there are two voices with a very slight delay between them, making the whole thing very disconcerting. The Google Pixel Buds Pro tries to do a lot of noise suppression, so even though you won't hear much background noise, that can go at the cost of the voice. So what does the triple microphone with bone voice print, AI, call, noise reduction on the Oppo get you? Well, not much. A lot of marketing speak, but the voice seems to be limited to a very narrow band of frequencies. And although the background noise was pretty much absent, the experience for the listener is going to be far from pleasant. The wind was clearly audible on the Oppo, maybe less than the Jabra, but still pretty loud. It didn't have any weird artifacting, but it wasn't the best either. Each of the buds we tried had some kind of trouble with the wind. Google with its whistly noise reduction was probably the best in this case. And it's not just these tests. We give you some samples so you can make sense of what we're saying, but we've used this for a good few weeks at this point, and in noisy conditions, the Oppo almost always isn't great. So this whole thing, the microphones would be its biggest weakness. But here's the thing, the Oppo also does Dolby binaural audio recording, which could be a cool feature if you could actually get it to work, because we don't have an Oppo Find phone and it's exclusive to that. So it's time to move on to
future-proofing. Oppo produces a sustainability report, but it's really quite confusing because it's not clear what they're actually doing. A lot of the stuff isn't environment related, but more geared towards other UN sustainability development goals. Which is fine, but the environmental aspect seems to be the bare minimum. But at least there is a report, which is more than can be said for other companies.
So what's the bottom line? These earbuds are very impressive. We are not surprised. You guys have been spamming us with requests for it. Very feature rich, and they do the basics really, really well. A couple of things to consider, beginning with the price. At a smidge over 200 euros, it's playing in the more expensive price bracket. At that price over here, you can get the Sony WF-1000XM4, the Google Pixel Buds Pro, Samsung's Buds 2, and Jabra's Elite 7 Pro, and not to mention their main inspiration, the AirPods Pro first generation themselves. Among these, we really think that the Oppo holds its own for sound. That's quite the flex, considering we are talking about the best of the best here. The EQ extensibility might be an issue, but it wasn't for us. This is a place where the Sony pulls ahead, of course. Excellent customizability, great battery life, and still some of the best ANC, but they're not as comfortable for many people, whereas the Oppo are among the most comfortable on this list and have the most complete feature set.
In terms of water and dust resistance, the Jabra is the closest competitor, and it's also a very close comparison. The Jabra has buttons, an excellent app, but the Oppo wins out on sound, especially due to the bass, which is very underemphasized on the Jabra. For calls, the Jabra can be loud in noisy conditions, but gives you the most features in terms of call controls and the experience of calling. The Jabra wins on battery life, but loses out on the finesse of the sound. Google's Pixel Buds Pro just doesn't sound as good to our ears, so we prefer the Oppo here since it also has a lot of extra features going for it. And where the Samsung Buds 2 sounds very good and is comfortable in the ear, it just doesn't do great for battery, IP rating, or touch controls. And then of course there are the budget bangers. The Liberty 4 with its squeeze controls and sublime sound. Check out the full review here. And for different reasons with its own quirks, the Edifier NeoBuds Pro. Sony's Link Buds S also comes to mind, which has some of the best microphones on Sony earbuds, even better than the XM4. If you want to spend much less and still get great sound or ANC, these are all pretty good options. The second aspect to consider with the Oppo is the availability. It's widely available in Asia and is somehow quite expensive in Europe and not as widely available. And in the US, we couldn't even find them on Amazon. So that's a bit of a mixed bag.
But you know what? The Oppo Enco X2 is really easy to recommend to folks who just want buds that they don't have to mess around with. Easy to recommend to your uncle or grandmother or cousin who wants a good complete set of earbuds but doesn't want Apple. There aren't a lot of great stem style buds out there for some reason in the Android world, unless you count the Edifier and the Soundcore we talked about. And if you can get over the battery life, microphones, and the fact that it looks a little like the AirPods Pro, we definitely give the Oppo Enco X2 our seal of approval. You've been satisfied that we finally made this video, and we've been DHRME. Namaste.